Hey,
Lovely
Amanda.
to meet you.
And you.
Carla's got her podcast, Wonder and Wellbeing. She's got a background in education and special. Oh well, Carla, I'll tell you what. You introduce yourself. Tell her what about yourself, and then we just go from there.
Thank you.
Yeah, my background is in special education. So I worked in the UK for 7 years, and then I worked overseas for 8 years. I did primary academic support in the UK, and then the same overseas in Qatar. I worked with secondary level boys over there who had gone through the schooling system, got to secondary school and were illiterate, usually not only in English but also in their first language, Arabic. So they had a combined intervention between myself and some other colleagues for getting basic literacy skills. So yeah, I did that for a long time, and I had to design like learning programs for them that would get them basic literacy skills, but without diagnosing them with special needs, because over there they have a stigma attached to special needs, particularly for boys. So it was all about giving them basic skills, but not going down the normal route that we would go down for special education in the UK. Yeah, that's what I did. So I was saying to Simon this morning, when I looked at your program, I've seen things similar because I've used so many different things. So
yeah, honestly, it's really resonating just when you talk. It was interesting because I went recently to Dubai, and I noticed, when you sort of just get a little bit of a sense when I mentioned dyslexia or SEN, when we were talking to curriculum advisors and stuff, there was a little bit of just not quite a recognition of that. I just picked up on that. So it was interesting when you mentioned that. There was a little bit of I felt perhaps a stigma, and it wasn't as accepted, but it's what I found with, this started quite a lot, was inspired by my son who struggles with dyslexia. But it was just something that we needed to overcome. But it was this stigma for him being in the SEN group, and it was these kind of labels, and then children start to think, oh, I've not got this, or I can't do this. And I said, Josh, it's just another way of needing to learn, that's all. It's more about education being able to support you and trying to bridge those barriers between disengagement and children getting their ideas onto paper, because that was the thing that worried me most, was that and especially with boys, there seems to be a big gap with boys and writing and self-expression.
Okay. So we're familiar. You can see why I bring Carla to the table now.
Yes,
because she's got a lot to offer in the way of experience, and an experience shared is a blessing increased. In brief, Carla, obviously I met Amanda in the car, in the taxi, and picked her up. She just come from a hospital appointment, and it was quite touching, to say the least. And I just thought it was very important. You're actually the first person I've actually contacted for Taxi Chronicles afterwards to actually have more of a formal recorded audio session. So you will be like the star. You're the star.
Oh, crikey. I should have done my hair better. It's been a maniac morning.
So Amanda, Scribe Easy. Before we go into the Scribe Easy, tell us, who is Amanda? Tell us your background, and then we'll move on from there.
Okay. I've come from an arts background. I've always felt there but the grace of, I don't know, good fortune or God, whatever. I was lucky because art sort of picked me up from not the most sort of usual kind of background, but then who has usual backgrounds these days? But art really helped me. And along my way as a young person, there have been various mentors in my life. Prince's Youth Business Trust was one of them when I was younger, and also when I applied to art school, one particular teacher, a mentor there, really saw, that he could make a difference in my life, and that's how I got into art school. I hadn't actually done art at school at the time, but it just makes you realise that school and, you know, education is about lifelong learning, and the opportunities and the people along the way. Oh, so yeah, I went to the Royal College of Art and actually took a master's in ceramics and glass. So I've always been really interested in processes. And I now have a son who's just turned 16, and a few years ago had a real kind of turning point in our lives, which has led to me moving into tech when I wasn't really a tech developer. But it was a very compelling time for me.
So those turning points, I know you spoke to me about it. Do you want to share that? Because, and the reason why I asked you this, and I believe it's very important, because it's your backstory and it's your sales to where you're going.
Yeah, so I've got two backstories. One that I don't actively publicize, which I think the lovely thing about jumping in a cab, in an Uber, is that you feel like you've got, or you meet someone and you resonate, and then you end up telling your stories, thinking that it's never going to go any further. So when we met, coming out of hospital, my backstory, one was my son's dyslexia, but two was as a parent. Now, I haven't struggled with dyslexia, but it was quite hard to understand, like a child, what they're going through. But then we lost my partner when it was quite a few years ago now, but he took his own life, and it was a very traumatic time for my son and I. And I experienced, and unfortunate, because as an artist, although at the time it was extreme grief and extreme shock, I experienced firsthand what it was like almost to be SEN. At the time, I lost my ability to focus, to read, to think straight. And I typically kept a lot of emotions locked inside. And actually it started to affect a few years on, because people say, how are you? And I couldn't unlock it. And so at the same time, I was seeing my son struggling at school, and just wanting, one day, it just really occurred to me that what I was experiencing was something that was an opportunity. Would never wish it on anybody, but it was as if it gave me the opportunity to really understand and start and see from the perspective of the child, which we forget as adults, especially if you haven't come from that, you know, you haven't got those, I don't want to call them disadvantages, but you need a different way to learn. And so it was as if there were the two needs: one, to help my son and I work out how to unlock many emotions and difficulties, and also one to feel how could we make this something that was a positive for others to gain from the experience. And so that's where starting to use pictures became really powerful. Picking things and noticing I could write, and I was writing quite a lot all over the place. I keep finding bits of paper, but I did start to just write things down. Nothing really made sense, but I did notice that there were patterns and words that I was using a lot. And it started to occur to me, I think when you're in a very elevated level of maybe fight or flight, you're seeing the world very, very differently. And I started to see, how by seeing my words on the page, that I could, I could see the patterns and the frequency of words. And it occurred to me that actually if there was a system where you could start to use the data to start to give yourself a personal space, one, to write, but then to feed back, to give the person something informative, you could start to make some sense of what you're thinking, or to get your thoughts and words onto the page. So it's combination of using pictures and responding to things, whether it was colours or images. And then slowly, this sort of use of an analog style of picture montage with words. And at the same time, I was using it to help Josh with his spellings and trying to tell stories by pulling images together and scene creation. This idea really came together. And we're in a very different place now from then. I did try at the time to go and get investment because I could see that this was something that could really help with unlocking stories and emotions, but also, you know, literacy, the sort of connect with, in here, the imagination and thoughts onto the page. Stop me if I'm...
No, I'm just listening. I will point out that we've got two artists in the house. So Carla's an artist as well.
Yeah.
And she's done this very, very good painting. And you know what, Carla? Remember the painting in red? Tell us briefly that story. We'll jump back into with Amanda.
Yeah, Simon likes a particular painting of mine because it was, I never really planned it, but I remember talking about it based on how it came about. Was that when I went to work, I was working with this manager that used to make me so angry every day. And I went home one day and I was so angry because I just couldn't get it out. So I just got red paint and I'm just like putting it everywhere. And it turned into a really beautiful painting of a woman eventually, once I got all the painting on there and got it out and then looked at it over a few days and stuff. So when I told Simon about it, he was like, oh, that's amazing. But it was just totally unplanned and it was rage. It was literally, you know, when you just want to go at someone, but you can't. It turned into a painting. But yeah.
Carla's being modest there because the concept of the painting was that if you could turn it whatever angle and it's a different image.
Oh yeah, it's not a different image, it's the same woman, but you can put the painting anywhere.
Amazing.
Yeah. So it was along those lines. So you two can resonate when it comes to expressing yourself through art. I'm not the best at art, so I'm probably alone in that subject there. But so you came up with this concept of expressing yourself through art, you could say. Where did you decide? How did you decide to build on that?
Well, it became so compelling because of what had happened with my partner, and I thought I can't let a life experience like this just go to nothing, you know. So I wanted something to be scalable, and so tech was the only way really to make that scalable. I was very fortunate at the time. I have worked in advertising as well. I used to be a VFX TV producer, so do a lot with CGI. And after the loss, I'd actually just gone freelance, and people within the industry were amazing. I think they thought we'll keep her busy, and I've never been more busy than then. I was doing a lot of work, but all the money that I earned, I ploughed into setting up what is now Scribe Easy today. So I worked like crazy for a couple of years and worked with different tech developers. So we first off built an iOS app, which did really well. But I think what's been amazing is since COVID, the tech has moved along massively, but also an appreciation for the need or the power of tech and how it can help in combination as a supportive tool, in combination with everyday life. And so it's taken a couple of iterations, and it's taken actually about 7 years really, but technically since 2018, I had to sort of rebuild a couple of times. It's not for the faint-hearted.
Can you walk us through those stages? So you said there's 7 years, obviously there's different stages. How did you feel And what were the major hurdles and how did you overcome them?
Well, initially there was just sheer enthusiasm, because I could see that what was a very simple idea. There was also a little bit of imposter syndrome. It's like, wow, this is so simple. I couldn't see that it existed anywhere in a tech kind of thing. You know, there's lots of things like Instagram and taking photos, but there was something a bit like when you use Photoshop, when you change a setting or you bring a character into a scene and then you put a different object into their hands, there's something really visceral. And I was really quite intrigued by how, when I tested it, I started to go into schools and just test it. So I tested extensively with children. I ran workshops in libraries, and again, just kept seeing how children's, you know, they really immerse themselves. And this thing about passive writing that you get a lot in classrooms where kids would just do anything they can to get through a story quickly, or not write at all even, or write the bare minimum. That wasn't the case with this. We had kids gripped. And my son said, "Mum, you've tricked kids into creating stories." But what was wonderful was how children started to just bring their memories. They'd assign to a character that they'd picked a personality or their nan, or, you know, it was really wonderful how it did become an outlet. So extensive testing, lots of analysis really from the storytelling, and then thinking, how can we make this better? How can we make this more, give back more analytics, more analysis, but also be very protective of the children's identities within the platform. There's many levels when you're creating tech. It's got to be scalable, it's got to be safe, it can't be hacked. Then suddenly we had opportunities within schools, we had opportunities with parents and home ed. So it was creating those different sort of scenarios for different user groups. And then a lot of it's been focused on development. And today we're using AI in many different ways. So created databases of words and created a thesaurus by hand. So children could start to build their vocabulary with synonyms. Oh, you've pulled up the...
I'm just bringing it out. Carry on. I'm just letting everybody see what we're talking about.
Oh, I should have... Do you want me to log in and show you?
No, it's okay. Well, you can talk us through it now if you want. It's just that you're speaking, and obviously, like we know, a lot of people learn in the kinetic form of visual. So, like you can see the screen, you could even direct me to where you want to, what section you want to talk about. But I just thought it's great for people to see.
Yeah. Well, not that you want to show a video now, but if you go learn more, if people clicked on there's a really short video, which just explains a little bit about the method and the analytics and the way, once you get writing, or the process, it's a creative process. You're making things, uploading them, taking them into a new world. So this sort of analog style, but we're also starting to make immersive scenes. So children could find the objects within a spaceship and then collect those and then make a story with those things. So sharing knowledge, we're starting to work with different museums now and libraries, so we can make writing and creativity really accessible to all sorts of children. We've done really well with the home ed groups and with children with autism. I think they just often people need something that's really stimulating, that just grabs them quickly. And sometimes that blank page, we really lose people. So this was about, an analog style of getting children to be masters of their own story. You chose the setting, giving them choices, whether it's images, the words, the synonyms, so you could move a child very quickly from using and understanding that you use this word a lot. How about trying a different synonym? But it's only actually when you see that you have insight into your own patterns that you're empowered. So we wanted to give children the tools rather than, someone else saying, try this, do this, building up those learning skills and that curiosity in yourself.